Inspecting your ammo should take you a minimal amount of time, but it's a very important thing for you to do. And if you do not do it, you are truly putting your own life in peril. Hello everyone, and thanks for tuning in to AmmoMart.com. Today we're going to deviate a little bit from historical video or perhaps doing some shooting and talk about the best practices to maintain your ammo for everyday carry or perhaps your duty weapon. Back when I first got into selling guns for a living, I was told by one of my mentors, Larry Corbin, to never take for granted things that people may or may not know. Just because you know them doesn't mean they do. And I find that to be very true about today's topic. It always amazed me the amount of everyday carry ammo or personal defense ammo I would sell people, and I would watch them go over to the range, load it into their magazines, not take one single solitary look at the round, and then the next thing that would happen is they would be off out the door and headed home with the assumption that the ammo is going to work. That's an extremely hazardous / dangerous practice for you to do. If you're going to trust your life to the ammunition that's in your gun and your magazines, then you need to follow these steps I'm about to lay down for you. It could save your life for sure. Believe it or not, there's about 26 million rounds made in the United States every day of all calibers by the big boys. And what I mean by the big boys are, say, Remington, Winchester, like that. That doesn't count what people call boutique shops. Uniquely, I have an insight into what goes on in the production of ammunition, and like everything else, if you make 1 million of them, even if you have a 1% failure rate, you're going to make some bad ones. The problem is, even in shops that hand quality check the rounds, people being people, they make mistakes. The round gets put in the box and it goes out the door. Eventually, it may end up in your gun. So let's talk about some of the things that go wrong and the ways that you can check your ammunition before you start to trust your life with it. For those of you that may not be aware, one of the major issues with any type of ammunition is the primer. Okay? The primer is actually a little more complicated than it looks, because I have one here and later on we'll try to get a closer view of it. The primer is basically made up of a cup, an anvil, the pellet, and maybe a sealant. What that does is once the firing pin strikes the back of the round, the pellet, it ignites the charge, and then the powder. So what happens is over the course of time, those things, the pellet becomes brittle. And one of the ways that you can increase the brittleness and basically the unreliability of it is to load the same cartridge more than twice into your gun. When you do that, it encounters significant impacts with the breech face. There was lately a very famous law enforcement case where he had just gotten his duty ammo. It was fairly new. And when he went to fire at a suspect, nothing happened. Click, no ignition. He immediately went tap, rack, bang, which is what he should do. He survived and won the gunfight. But then that department started questioning, why did this happen? Well, investigation would show that he had small children in his house and he didn't want the loaded gun lying around. So what he would do is load and unload the gun, sometimes several times a day. That impact with the breech face failed the pellet, and I'll show you an example of it. It's way too small to see from here about what happens when those things deteriorate and crack. There is now nothing to start the ignition of the powder charge. So keep that in mind. Don't unload and unload the same cartridge. A best practice would be no more than twice. If you do unload the cartridge, put some kind of mark on it with a Sharpie. The second mark is the X. That X now becomes a range round. Don't trust your life with it. After 2 loads, out the door it goes. During the next portion of this video, you have to keep this in mind. There's no possible way that you can inspect and actually pick up this defect. This defect is actually, there's no flash hole cut into the bottom of the case. So if you look at the back of the round, everything looks normal. Problem is, there's no spark, no hole for the spark to get through. This is a nightmare. This is where you have to know your immediate action drill of tap, rack, bang, get this out and go on with the next one. So this one, you really can't catch on inspection, but I wanted to show it as a way of identifying to people they ain't all perfect, despite what you're told. One of the next issues that you could potentially find is some marring. This has a burr on it, okay? It may or may not chamber in your gun. The downside is you may find another gun with a wider tolerance that it will work in. So I advise everybody, take the barrel out of your gun, put your everyday carry ammo in it with just the barrel and see if it works. You can do this all day long. Dump it out and do it for every individual round that you're trusting your life to. It takes a minute. Drop it in, make sure it's not marred. Some cases get bulged and you cannot even see it with the eye. There's a barely perceptible bubble right at the case mouth and it won't chamber. Test them. Just pull your barrel out, drop them in, drop them out. If it chambers up good, you're fine. Back to the primer issues. This primer is actually put in backwards. It won't go off. And even though it looks right, if you don't really take a look or you just glance at it, you may go right past it. But as you can see, there's a significant difference in the way those appear. This is a very common thing in the manufacture of ammo. Primer goes in backwards, no boom. This one here doesn't have a primer at all. This is also very common. Of course, the powder would leak out, but the projectile stays. And if you look at it, looks okay until you flip it over, okay? There isn't going to be any boom here, also causing you to tap rack, bang, causing you time in a gunfight. Not something we can have happen. I chose this case here because it's obviously marred at the case mouth. This is what happens when the projectile goes in and it's not quite straight. It catches the edge and it pushes it down. This is another reason why you want to chamber in the barrel. This is an over-exaggeration, but some of them have just the slightest enough deformity in the case, they won't chamber. So keep in mind, you have to check. This one here is quite interesting, and this is why you have to be very diligent about your inspection of your ammo. This primer is actually put in sideways. And if you don't closely inspect it, it looks like it's right, but you'll notice it's actually in sideways, not upside down, and it probably will not ignite either. It's a slim possibility, but my guess is won't happen. Here we have a 44-40 round. And the reason I brought this one is to show you how crumpled up some of these get. People that manufacture all day long have barrels of defects where they'll eventually pull the projectile and perhaps recycle the powder, whatever they can do to get some of their cost back. But this is pretty common. Common meaning less than 1%, but when you make a lot, still a pretty high number. Inspecting your ammo should take you a minimal amount of time, but it's a very important thing for you to do. And if you do not do it, you are truly putting your own life in peril. Now let's talk about shelf life of everyday carry ammo. 6 months is about it. If you store ammo in your house with the right gel packs or desiccant packs and it's not subject to humidity changes or moisture, it almost has an indefinite shelf life. But on your person, it doesn't. For all of you guys that are creeping around with everyday carry ammo that's 2 years old, the cases are tarnished and they're 4 different colors in the same magazine, get rid of it. Turn them into range rounds, shoot the ammunition, and go get fresh. 6 months is about it, especially if you carry the gun every day, because it's subject to even more weather and humidity changes. Earlier, I kept mentioning tap rack slide. Tap rack slide is an immediate action drill for what happens when you have your pistol pointed on the target or downrange. You press the trigger and you hear click with no corresponding bang. The NRA and some range rules recommend that you keep the weapon pointed downrange for perhaps 30 seconds to make sure you don't have a hang fire. In a gunfight, you don't have that luxury. Please follow your range safety rules. If you're not in a fight, it may be the thing to hold on to the gun, keep it safely oriented in a good direction, and wait to see if the round will actually cook off. When that normally happens, it's usually bang, press half a second, and then the gun goes off. It's usually not 30 seconds later. Now, back to tap rack slide. In the middle of an emergency situation, if I press the trigger and there's no corresponding discharge of the round, what we want to immediately do is tap the bottom of the pistol to make sure the magazine is fully seated. 99% of the time, this is why the round didn't go off. It's because there's not one in the chamber. That's a very common mistake people make. The magazine fits somewhat snugly into the well. Even with a loaded magazine, once it's up in there far enough, it may not fall out onto the ground, and you just assume everything's fine. Run the slide, except the slide goes over nothing, and now you have nothing in the chamber. That's why we want to tap the bottom of the magazine. At that point, we want to grab onto the slide, forcefully jerk it to the rear to either one, throw out the round that didn't fire, or develop enough energy off the rack motion to fully chamber the round on top of the magazine we just inserted. Hence tap, rack, bang. Then we're going to point the weapon back down range and attempt to squeeze off or press off another trigger. One more significant reason to not load and unload the same bullet is when you chamber a round, the nose of that bullet actually takes a pretty significant impact into the throat of the barrel and as it goes up into the ramp. Over a period of time, studies have shown that that actually continues to push the bullet farther and farther back into the case. I deal with damaged returns all the time with ammunition, and even being dropped off the truck, you find that the bullet gets pushed so far into the case, it makes it unsafe to fire. That's a very important thing to pay attention to as you inspect your rounds. If one of them appears short, that could potentially lead to a catastrophic failure, meaning excessive pressure because the bullet can't escape. Back to the seating of the bullet into the case, you should take your finger and wiggle on the projectile. It should not move at all. If it does, something's wrong. So, once again, don't load and unload the bullet more than twice. This could result in a catastrophic failure, injury to yourself, or a malfunction that ultimately leads to your death. One other thing I would like to add is this. If you change brands of ammo, in particular you change grainage of ammo because when you went to the store, that's all they had, please function test your new purchase. It's not true that just because your gun functions well on 115 grain ammo, that it will like 147 of the same maker. People make that mistake all the time. Well, it's Remington. Well, it's Hornady. The more expensive and the tighter tolerances your gun is, it just has certain ammo it will not function reliably on. Yes, it might shoot for a bit, but the key we need is reliable. Your everyday carry ammo has to be reliable, and the only way you will know that is if you do all of these steps, and then please function test the ammo by firing the gun. I hope these tips were helpful. For some people, I'm sure it was common knowledge. For others, perhaps not. Sometimes you don't know what you don't know, and it can cost you your life. If you like these videos, don't be afraid to like and subscribe, and it's been a pleasure spending time with you.